Hi, I'm Jeff Garrison. Welcome to another episode of the Results on Purpose Coaching Podcast. So, if you go up to any of my kids, and they're all adults now, but if you ask them to finish this phrase, you get what? They're going to say, you get what you tolerate. And that is a life concept that we have tried to pass on to them, but it's also a leadership concept, and that's what we'll be talking about today.
Welcome to the Growing Leaders Podcast, powered by Results on Purpose. If you're a small or mid-sized business owner or part of a leadership team, this podcast is built for you. We share ideas and stories to help you grow into the leader your business needs.
Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the idea that you get what you tolerate. And I'm going to share one, kind of how it happens innocently, so to speak, as you are growing a business, and then share some other examples of how I have seen the impact of tolerating things, which is really a lack of boundaries or not holding people to boundaries that you have set. But we're just going to give you some ideas about what it looks like, and then a little bit how to change it, how as a leader you might need to be thinking about it. So first, here's what I see a lot. You started a business and maybe you were on your own at first and you hire a couple of people, and maybe you've sort of gone through a couple of people until you get that first key person, that person who becomes your right hand, your lieutenant, and they just take on a lot of things and they do a lot of things and they help you grow your business to a certain point. But then the business starts to outgrow that person's ambition or their skill set, whatever it is, and it's okay for a bit, but then it starts to get to this point, well, do I start promoting people past them? Do I allow them to take on roles and tolerate subpar performance because they're doing it the way they've always done it, things like that. And that person kind of becomes an anchor to the business. And that's an area where leaders are tolerating something. I totally get why. It's pretty emotional when we recognize it and start having conversations about it and need to make changes. But that's one of those areas where we fall into it sort of innocently. It just happens or sneaks up on us. And I wanted to point that out because some of you may be in that position. And the first thing is just kind of acknowledge what's happening. Now, here's an example of with a client, how that happened. It was really that exact thing. And it's been years since we had this scenario, but this person was on the leadership team. They didn't necessarily have a senior leadership role, but because of their tenure, because of their experience, the owner thought it would be a good person to have participate on the leadership team and in meetings for their perspective. But as the company was starting to grow and expand, and as we're setting big objectives for the organization and installing a new level of expectations and accountability, there was a lot of resistance from this person as their role and their influence and impact was clearly starting to shrink. And they were resisting hard. And in fact, after the very first leadership team meeting with this person, at the end of that meeting in the evening, I told the owner, this isn't going to work. And it was very hard for them. But at any rate, this owner tolerated poor behavior, pushback, negative, inappropriate emotions out of this person for a long time and had an impact on the organization until eventually a bit later, we just had to make a hard change, a hard decision. She got painted into a corner. But this is one of those things where the boundaries, at least it wasn't recognized that they needed to be reset and that person needed to be counseled and held accountable for particularly their mindset. Then you get what you tolerate. That's really the lesson from that. The owner and the rest of the leadership team, they got what they allowed to happen. Another instance, and this is an interesting thing. This is a client with a long-term partner. There was a time where the partnership, where this company would distribute their products. And at the time they started, it seemed like a good deal having a company increase their distribution of this product. But over time, as my clients' own capabilities grew, their ability to manufacture and particularly their ability to market and sell, that partner wasn't keeping up, and their contribution kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller to what the organization was selling until they were actually kind of getting in the way. My client was actually handing them business because of the partnership and taking a lower profit on that because of it. And again, this is just one of those relationships that they tolerated poor performance over time. And I don't want to exaggerate because they were having conversations, but it just makes a good example of how you can tolerate these type of relationships, and you just get what you tolerate. Now, they recognized that the relationship had to change or it had to end, and they had the conversations about new expectations, and clearly this was not going to happen, so they had a necessary ending of that relationship. And it is likely that they're going to profit a lot more from it. But that's an example of how it's not necessarily somebody inside your business, but it's somebody that's a partner or a vendor that is not performing as you would expect. And if you tolerate that, if you don't talk to them, if you don't make it clear what the expectations are, well, you get that. Where I see this all the time, by the way, is when companies outsource marketing. When they outsource marketing and aren't clear about the exact results that they expect, they get a lot of data back from the marketing company about activity on their website and things like that, but not getting the kind of results that convert into new business all the time. So that's another example of we haven't created clear expectations. We haven't held people accountable for them. We're getting what we tolerate. Now, let me share something positive. I had a client with a manager, a mid-level manager, who technically was good and did a good job, got pretty results on the things that she was handling, but we'll just say was off-putting to everybody else. She was damaging to the culture. She was unapproachable because of the way she would respond to people. Now, as an owner or a leader, you can say, hey, that's just Bill. I'm making up a name, but that's just Bill, but he does good work. So we'll just put him in his corner. We'll try to put fences around him, but that's just Bill. Well, in that case, you've made a conscious decision to tolerate somebody chipping away at your culture. And what are you going to get? You're going to get other people who are less serious about positive collaborative behavior in your workplace, or you're going to get people who decide, well, this isn't any better working here than other places culturally. Maybe I'll just leave for a little bit more money, things like that. But the point is, you're tolerating somebody being below the bar and it's having an impact. But in this case, getting back to the example, this person, they had the conversation. They started doing the performance coaching, talking about their mindset and the way they show up with other people and the feedback that they're getting and so on. And that person took it to heart. They didn't quite realize the impact they were having. These things are habits that people bring. And when they're getting regular feedback, they're starting to work on themselves. And she was motivated to be better. She did not want to be perceived as that person that was sort of a pain to work with, or that nobody wanted to go in and talk to or ask for help. She didn't want to be that person. And once she was made aware and got some coaching and some regular feedback, she was able to fix that, turn it around. And that's something that really strengthens the organization. That's an example of not tolerating something. So they got better results out of it. It just goes along with this idea, get what you tolerate. So now that hopefully you understand what I'm saying, and perhaps you're thinking about, well, where do I do this? How has this impacted my business? Let me tell you where, when I'm talking to clients about it, and I'm sometimes getting pushback in the conversation, it's because of some head trash. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the head trash right now. The first piece of head trash that I hear is leaders will say, hey, we know this is an issue. We know that person's attitude is an issue, or that their performance is an issue, or they're slow or they're inaccurate. But it's a really busy time of year for our company right now. We can't do anything to upset that person, or we certainly can't let that person go. And I call this head trash because they're impacting the performance of everybody around them. Probably. They're certainly impacting the attitude of everybody around them. Your people know that they're a subpar performer. And when you do something about it, the people around will step up temporarily anyway to help close the gap by whatever you have had to do. If you had to let somebody go, they'll close the gap temporarily because you showed good leadership. You earn their respect. If they're the right people, they want to help the company succeed. So it's head trash to say we're too busy. Sometimes the head trash is nobody else knows how to do their job. I get it. Now, if you've been documenting processes and things like that along the way, this isn't an issue. But the thing is most of you who are watching this right now or listening perhaps are not rocket scientists. I mean, your job is not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. It might be complicated, but whatever it is, if you need to let a person go or move them, you'll figure out within a week or two, probably within a few hours or something, how their job needs to get done. And I can almost guarantee you, once you or the right leader or person starts digging into it, you're going to find out they weren't doing what you thought they were doing in the first place. So that's a piece of head trash that makes us continue to tolerate poor performance or poor behavior. Another piece of head trash, light head trash, is I'm concerned about their future. And nobody says it that way exactly, but most owners for sure are good people. And most I find to be paternalistic or maternalistic. They feel a responsibility for the people that work for them to take care of them somewhat. And that is fantastic. I think that's one of the things that drives the entrepreneurial engine here in America is leaders just wanting to have an impact all around. So that's good stuff. But we need to be careful about, even though we want to see everybody around us succeed and do well and perform well and take care of their own families, if it's not a reason to tolerate subpar performance or behavior. That's about us, and we need to work on that little piece of head trash. And the last thing is that we hesitate to give people feedback sometimes, or to what we feel like is harsh, or coach them, or give them warnings, or put them on performance improvement plans, or just flat out let them go because we feel like we haven't fulfilled our responsibility as a leader. And this might be intuitive, that feeling like, have I created all the clarity that I'm supposed to create? Do they have an understanding of how they're supposed to be doing their job? Have I let them down somehow in that? Do they have the training? Do they have the tools? All those things. And I get that. But what happens is, because we don't step in, because we tolerate the behavior and don't go in and start coaching and try to fix it, and if that doesn't have an effect right away, we don't take the next step. When we do that, we tend to sit back and wait until that final straw, and we get angry, and then we go do something about it. That's not necessarily fair either. But at any rate, these are pieces of head trash. And in another podcast, we'll probably be talking about how to set people up for success and more about creating that clarity at the individual level so we can avoid these kinds of things or at least make the resolution pretty quick. That's for a different time. But here's the last thing I would like to talk about as this regards business. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or even as a leader in an entrepreneurial organization, I would ask you to think about what it is that you want personally. And I'm going to talk to everybody like they're the owner right now in the organization, but it does count for everyone. I have one owner, and we had this conversation. It was on purpose because he was dealing with this kind of situation. And I asked him, so look, as your business grows and becomes more successful, what are you really working for? What is a signal or a thing that you want that just like shows great success and so on? Why are we doing this? And one of the things he said is that he would like to spend a month every year in France at some point. He's a big Tour de France fan. He would like to be there while his business runs and watch the Tour de France every year. And it doesn't matter what it is, but understanding that that's what he wants out of the business. And then when we put these other things in context and saying, when you tolerate certain levels of performance over time without stepping in and coaching or moving people on, or when you tolerate behaviors that are below the bar and start to have a ripple effect through your organization, you are putting off and perhaps jeopardizing France. It's possible that this thing that you really want might not happen. And that thing, that idea, you're allowing someone else to take it from you. And so when we talk about you get what you tolerate, this is kind of the ultimate you get what you tolerate, or you're not getting things because of what you tolerate. But at any rate, you get the idea, and I'm trying to bring it home and make it real personal for leaders. When you tolerate certain behaviors, maybe you want that next promotion. Tolerating behavior in someone on your team might keep you from that. And that promotion means more personal growth, more authority, perhaps more money so that you can do some other things that you want. So when we tolerate those behaviors, whether you're the owner or another leader, it does have a personal impact on you. And you need to be really aware of that when you're dealing with your own head trash and saying, is this head trash, or do I just need to go deal with this? So at any rate, you get what you tolerate. I want to make one last comment just about this. In the beginning, we said this was not just a leadership idea, but it's a life concept. And we do this in our own lives. We tolerate behaviors of people around us. Perhaps it's family, perhaps it's friends, those with whom you have tight relationships. And if those relationships aren't just what you want, maybe it's with your kids, things like that, you do have to ask yourself, what am I tolerating? You have to look in the mirror and saying, am I allowing someone to take advantage of me? Am I allowing someone to mistreat me? Things like that. These are other ideas. You get what you tolerate. And of course, this is why I want my kids to understand this really well. Sometimes we're dealing with people who have addictions or things like that, and we tolerate that kind of stuff. So while I'm on the subject, I just wanted to mention this is really important in life. And if this is something you're dealing with, start having conversations with the right people to help you learn to set boundaries and hold the line on those boundaries for yourself and for those other people. All right. That's today's topic. You get what you tolerate. It's kind of heavy stuff when you start to think about it and start to look in the mirror and saying, what responsibility do I have for the way people behave or perform around me and in my business? I hope this was valuable. And now, if you like the stuff that you're hearing and you think it might be valuable to get more and get a lot of these things from the podcast into the culture and operation of your business, check out resultsonpurpose.com. Consider bringing a coach on to help your organization. And if you really like what you're hearing and think, I would like to be talking to business owners and leadership teams about this stuff and training and coaching them, well, come to resultsonpurpose.com, go to the Become a Coach page, and perhaps we can help you make that a thing true for you. All right. Adios, everybody.